On behalf of our leadership team, the St. Joe's faculty and staff, we welcome all of you, our students, our distinguished guests, our media partners, members of the larger Western New York community, and of course, our two candidates. Welcome to St. Joe's for the 39th Annual Political Debate. At this time, we invite you all to stand as we will begin our morning together in prayer. And let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. Loving Father, we thank you for bringing all of us together this morning for this special opportunity to listen to these two candidates for the county executive position in Erie County and to learn more about the issues impacting our community. We pray for these two leaders and for all government leaders. May they always lead and govern with compassion, a commitment to social justice, and a concern for the dignity of all people. And although our focus is on our local community today, our hearts continue to break at the horrific stories and images coming out of Gaza. In solidarity, we pray for all those whose lives have been impacted by this violence and pray with our whole hearts for a peaceful resolution to this unimaginable tragedy. We also pray today for the peaceful rest of Mr. Jack Courtney. He's the father of New York State Governor Kathy Hochul, and he passed away just a few hours ago. St. John Baptist de La Salle, and live Jesus in our hearts. We ask you to please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem. The anthem this morning will be sung by the St. Joe's Varsity Singers under the direction of Mr. Michael Hooker. You can all be seated at this time. Before our debate officially begins, we'd like to introduce our two candidates to the audience gathered here today and to those that are listening and watching from afar. We start by welcoming Mrs. Chrissy Casilio, the Republican candidate for Erie County Executive. Mrs. Casilio was born and raised in Clarence and is a proud graduate of Clarence High School. After high school, she attended the State University at Buffalo, where she earned her degree in journalism. Casilio is married and is the mother to 3 children. In 2014, she founded Casilio Communications, a multifaceted company that provides marketing, public relations, branding, and advertising services to clients around Western New York. Casilio was selected in 2013 by Buffalo Business First for their 30 Under 30 honor. This is Casilio's first run for public office. Welcome to St. Joe's, Mrs. Casilio. We also welcome back to St. Joe's Mr. Mark Poloncarz, the Democrat and incumbent candidate for Erie County Executive. Mr. Poloncarz was born and raised in Lackawanna, New York, and attended Lackawanna Senior High School. He attended the State University at Buffalo, graduating in 1989 with a Bachelor of Arts degree. After completing his undergraduate studies, he spent 5 years working in the private sector. Mr. Poloncarz went on to attend the University of Toledo College of Law, where he graduated in 1997. He practiced financial and corporate law in Buffalo for a number of years. In 2006, Mr. Poloncarz was elected into office and served as the Erie County Comptroller for 6 years. In 2012, he was elected as the Erie County Executive for the first time and has since been re-elected for a second term and a third term. Mr. Poloncarz is now running for an unprecedented fourth term as Erie County Executive. And this is the fourth time that he has debated at St. Joe's, a new record for the St. Joe's debate. Welcome back to St. Joe's, Mr. Poloncarz. This morning, all of the debate questions have been developed and will be asked by our student panel, a group of 4 students from our AP Government class. The young men on this year's panel are Michael Helfrich, Dorian Buckley, Christopher DePinto, and Joseph Pico. Our timekeepers this morning are Matthew Rosso and Henry Vocal. And our fact checkers are Connor Stocker and Aiden Dickerson. The question and panel moderator is once again Mr. Pat McHale from the St. Joe's History Department. Welcome. Thank you. And I now turn things over to our debate moderator, a longtime social studies teacher at St. Joe's and the moderator of the St. Joe's debate for the past 39 years, Mr. Ted Lina.
Thank you, St. Joe's. I can't tell you how proud I am of this school, and especially my AP Government class, that worked diligently on preparing this debate. When I started this in October of 1983, Mr. McHale was in the audience as a student. Also, our principal, Mr. Spillman, also served on the debate panel himself when he graduated several years later. I know looking out at you, I see future leaders in industry, science, business, politics, and today I have with us this morning 4 former students who were fortunate to have me as their teacher. I would ask each of them to stand as I introduce them. First of all, we have State Senator Rob Ort. We have a Supreme Court Judge, Emilio Colavacchio. We have another state senator, Tim Kennedy. And we have a Buffalo councilman, Joel Ferraletto. I thank you for joining us this morning. This year, we are very pleased to host the debate for county executive. To our underclassmen that have never been to a debate, I encourage you to listen carefully and enjoy the exchange of ideas between the 2 candidates. St. Joe's has proudly been sponsoring debates for 39 years, and I am extremely grateful for the candidates to join us. Without them, there is no debate. Thank you so much. The issues that will be discussed this morning will ultimately have an impact on all of us. The topic is the future of Erie County. At one time, Erie County was part of Niagara County, and in 1821, it became a separate political entity. There are 27 towns and cities in Erie County, including the city of Buffalo. The county has a population of just under 1 million people, an annual budget of approximately $1.7 billion, that's billion dollars, and the county executive is elected to a 4-year term, and the salary is $107,000. I will now go through the format for today's debate. So each candidate will be given an opening statement of 2 minutes each. Ms. Casilio will begin followed by Mr. Poloncarz. There is no rebuttal to opening or closing statements. There will then be a moderator question that each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to, which the panel deemed the most important question, with no rebuttal. We will then begin with our panel questions. A direct question will be given 1.5 minutes, and the rebuttal will be 45 seconds. We will then close the debate with one more moderator question of 2 minutes, and we will begin our closing statements. So let's get started with our opening statement. Ms. Casilio.
Thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Thank you all for putting together this incredible event today. Thank you for having me. I know that the history of this event is extremely important, and I also greatly appreciate Catholic schools. My mother, who is here today, was actually a teacher at Nativity for 16 years, Nativity Cougar. Before that, she taught at St. John Canty in Cheektowaga, and the Catholic faith and Catholic education has been a very important part of our lives. So thank you very much for being here and putting this together. The simple way of describing me is by saying that I am the opposite of Mr. Mark Poloncarz in nearly every way. Besides running to be the first female county executive, I'm a mother, I own a business, and I have seen firsthand what the residents of Erie County are going through right now. And they're suffering. We have a major affordability issue going on, and thanks to inflation. And while our county government can't directly affect the prices of the goods that we buy at the store, they can work hard to tighten the budget and spend less and put more money back in our pockets so that we can afford life a little bit better than we are right now. We have safety issues going on where we are not feeling safe compared to in any time in history. We have one of the highest car thefts in the country here. We have major issues with larceny galore. We have drug problems at an all-time high. And our government seems to be out of touch of the true issues that are going on in Erie County. And that's why I'm running. I'm looking forward to talking about these issues more, and I'm looking forward to being your next Erie County executive because it's time for change.
Thank you, Ms. Casilio. Mr. Poloncarz, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. It's good to be back here at St. Joe's. When I look out at you, I look out at myself a few years ago when I was attending Lackawanna High School. I grew up in Lackawanna with my parents and my 2 younger brothers. My father was a steel worker, my mother was a nurse, and it was good life until, of course, the steel mills closed. And in a very short period of time, 30,000 plus people across all of Erie County lost their jobs. And it created an economic malaise that unfortunately existed in our community for decades and decades. I went away to college for law school, the University of Toledo, as was noted. I came back in 1997 at a time that everyone else was leaving. Many of the people that I graduated high school and college with left. Why? Because they couldn't find a job here. But I knew what we had in this community. I knew what existed in Buffalo and Erie County, and I wanted to work hard at it to try to restore what we once had. And that's what we've done. I practiced law for a number of years with a couple firms, Watson Bennett and Kavanaugh and Cook. And then there was a terrible fiscal crisis in which Erie County government was basically driven into the ground near bankruptcy by the former leaders of our community. And I ran for county controller to help alleviate the problems, the chief financial officer of the county. And I was privileged to serve as county controller. And then in 2011, I didn't like the direction our county was going under my predecessor. He believed that government should be run like a business. Government is not a business, and it should not be run like one, because government provides services to everyone in our community, including those you'll never make a profit on. And the people gave me an opportunity to serve as county executive. And I'm proud of what we've done. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the history of our community. We have the lowest tax rate in the history of our community. We have thousands of jobs available. When I graduated high school, there were not thousands of jobs available, which is going to be good for you, because if you decide not to go to college, you can get a job and stay in our community. We've built this new Buffalo, this new Erie County, and I'm looking for one more term to continue the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poloncarz. Our next question will be a moderator question, and each candidate will be given 2 minutes with no rebuttal, beginning, of course, with Ms. Casilio. Every resident of Erie County knows all too well the dangers of winter weather. Last December, our county, especially the city of Buffalo, suffered one of the worst blizzards in our history. It left hundreds of thousands of people without power and killed at least 47 people in Erie County. The findings of a nearly 100-page report produced by New York University showed that most residents of the county felt that in the days leading up to the storm, many emergency services did not accurately convey how life-threatening the blizzard would actually be. And despite the release of its internal memos, many in the county criticized a lack of transparency between the county executive's office and the public on what exactly went wrong during the storm. Many meteorologists are predicting another harsh winter for Western New York, and understandably, many in our county are concerned by the prospect of another blizzard. Knowing what we know now, what would you do differently? Ms. Casilio.
Thank you. To be honest with you, the response from the storm was so bad, I was surprised that my opponent decided to run for re-election. You see, he had days to prepare for that storm. And if you look back, what was happening days before the storm was that he was asking for us to name the storm and give him names. And prior to that, we were having to name the snowplows. But the bottom line was that we were unprepared and we had failed leadership. Because our leadership was more concerned about not ruining the Christmas holiday, and as a result, we had people die. We were worried about Christmas and people died. We need to have a comprehensive safety plan that everybody knows about. It's no surprise that there's snowstorms in Buffalo. This shouldn't have been new. The fact that it's 2023, even if this was the worst, the fact that we had more people die in 2023 than in any other storm in the history of Buffalo, especially with the communication and the technologies that we have, is despicable. We should have had the National Guard here earlier. We should have a clear plan of attack in advance of how to be safe and what will dictate what is worthy of a shutdown. We should never run things so closely to the timing of the storm, because I know my opponent will say, oh, well, the storm came a couple hours earlier than we expected. We should have been closed down the night before. We should have had a plan in place, because this is the city of Buffalo and storms happen. He's had 12 years to get ready for storms, and we had 47 plus people die as a result of his failed leadership.
Thank you. Mr. Poloncarz?
Thank you, Ted. This was the worst storm of my lifetime. I lived through the blizzard of '77, which has always been considered the worst storm ever. And while that was longer, this was a more horrific storm. And we had received information from the Weather Service that this was going to be a once-in-a-generation storm. What we weren't told is this will be a life-threatening storm that if you are outside, you can die. And that's what happened. I was the first person to issue a state of emergency actually the night before. We did not implement a driving ban until the next morning because we wanted the individuals who were working the night before on third shift, and there are thousands of people who work third shift, 11 to 7, to be able to get home. I was at our emergency operations center at 6:30 in the morning. It was raining out at that point. I then spent the next 48 hours basically at the emergency operations center. We've worked with our partners to ensure that we have a better means of communication going forward so the public can truly understand what happened. I'm disappointed that my opponent is basically blaming me for every death. There were deaths associated with people just shoveling snow and having a heart attack. There were individuals who died in their homes because we could not get to them due to the ferocity of the storm after they lost power. How can I be blamed for a power outage at a substation? But one thing we have done is we worked with National Grid and NYSEG to ensure that their substations are hardened. So if we get a storm like this again in the future, they will not go down. The National Grid representatives said they've never seen anything like this before. I was working very hard, and my opponent's father, who's in the crowd, Patrick Casilio, the supervisor of Clarence, was on those Zoom calls talking about what a great job we did opening up Clarence and the other suburbs in the county, because our primary responsibility is county. We came to rescue the city of Buffalo. We spent $5 million in about 48 hours to help open up the city, and we got it done in 36 hours once we were asked to help out. And we'll always be here to help the city if it needs it.
Thank you. At this point, we will have our first panel questions. And from this point on, each candidate will be given a minute and a half for a direct response, and the rebuttal will be 45 seconds. Our first question will be directed to Ms. Casilio.
Mrs. Casilio, your opponent, Mark Poloncarz, has held the office of Erie County Executive since 2012, accumulating over a decade's worth of experience. On the other hand, if you were elected, this would be your first government position of any kind. You have claimed your experience running a business is sufficient experience to be county executive. However, being the CEO of a small company and the executive of a county of nearly 1 million people are very different things. On top of your lack of experience, you are also the opposition party to Mr. Poloncarz, as well as much of the current county legislature. You yourself have even stated, quote, "You won't find a greater contrast to Mark Poloncarz than me," end quote. Given your contrasting political views, and more importantly, contrasting experience compared to Mr. Poloncarz, what do you expect to accomplish if elected, and how do you plan to overcome the obstacles you would face from day one on the job?
Thank you. Well, I can tell you that before running for county executive at this point, I've had more experience than Mr. Poloncarz because he never owned a business. He hasn't raised 3 small children. He hasn't had to go through and see firsthand the struggles that fellow business owners have been going through. He has lost touch with the people of Erie County, where I'm experiencing it firsthand. So my combination of my leadership positions throughout the community, including being a board of director for an organization that helped children in need, I have been a part of the Erie County Law Enforcement Foundation. I've been a proud third-generation Clarence Rotarian. And when it comes to running a business, the fundamentals are still there, where you, as a business owner, have to find people that are more talented than you, and most importantly, you need to hold people accountable. You need to make sure people are doing their job and they're doing it the right way, because that's what makes the difference between success and not, accountability. And that's what I'm going to bring to county government, because at the end of the day, all the services that we provide are important, but it's most important for us to remember that our job is to serve the people of Erie County and not anybody else, the people of Erie County first. Thank you.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Mr. Poloncarz?
Well, the one thing I've always said since I've been county executive is we work for the people. My bosses are the 950,000 or so people of Erie County. If you live in Erie County, you're one of my bosses. Experience matters. It really does. I was a practicing attorney, getting out there, working with clients, working with my partners and others in our firm to ensure that that business could be run and we could pay the employees and the salaries that we had. I then was elected the county's chief financial officer at CFO and did that for 6 years. I've now been the county executive for my 3rd term. And I'm going to put this out there. If you have a family member that has cancer, do you go to the person who was just out of medical school? No. You go to the specialist who's experienced and knows how to handle the issues, and that's what I can do.
Thank you. Our next direct question to Mr. Poloncarz.
Mr. Poloncarz, with the influx of migrants into New York City Mayor Eric Adams started relocating the migrants throughout New York, with 540 coming to Buffalo. Over the summer, multiple counties declared states of emergencies as a way to bar any incoming migrants from using local hotels. At the time, you said, quote, "I will not be issuing an emergency order prohibiting the housing of such persons. Not only is such an order illegal, it is morally repugnant," unquote. However, subsequent to allegations of rape and sexual assault against a number of these migrants, you issued an order that prohibited any more migrants from coming into the county until you could, quote, "work out a new security plan," unquote. As of today, no such security plan has been announced. What is the future for migrants coming to Erie County?
Well, actually, I did not issue an order. I had a conversation with New York City Mayor Eric Adams, in which we agreed no one would be sent until we could solve more of the issues. And that's one of the reasons I also had the conversation with Governor Hochul, and she put the National Guard not only here, but at every location in New York State where migrants were. I said what I said, and I still believe it, because it was illegal to issue a state of emergency to bar individuals for allowing them to be in housing, hotels, based on where they came from, the color of their skin. That's illegal under Title IV of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I believe it's morally repugnant to do and issue an order like that. You issue an emergency order during a blizzard or when things went really bad in COVID. But my opponent and others just issued emergency orders because they disagreed with something politically. On an average basis, more than 2,000 immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers come through Erie County. And we never hear about them because they just come through, they either stay here or they go elsewhere and become new Americans. Yet others, including my opponent, made it sound like 500 individuals coming into our community was this takeover. It wasn't. We had 2 bad incidences, and those individuals need to be held responsible under the law for the crimes they may have committed. Because remember, they're innocent until proven guilty. But since then, things have worked well, and we are creating a better community for all and giving those individuals an opportunity for a better future.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Ms. Casilio?
Well, the news this morning said that there have been 13 arrests thus far, but that aside, let me tell you what I find morally repugnant. I find it morally repugnant that we were told that the migrants coming here were vetted, and that was a lie. We were told that this would not cost Erie County taxpayers any of our resources, financially and otherwise. That was also a lie, because guess what? Your Erie County tax dollars are paying for the defense attorneys of the rapist, as well as the prosecution. So what's morally repugnant is that to this day, we still don't know exactly who is here, where they're from, and what the plan is. And in the meantime, our schools are having to deal with the increase of costs. There are major language barriers, there's an increase in crime, and there is no plan and no transparency from this county executive on how we're going to solve that situation.
Thank you. Our next direct question to Ms. Casilio.
Ms. Casilio, on January 6th, 2021, the United States Capitol was sent into turmoil as many protesters of the result of the 2020 presidential election resorted to violence, breaking into the Capitol itself and assaulting all who tried to stop them. At the end of the day, more than $30 million in damages was caused. Over 100 people were injured and 5 people died. Since that day, hundreds of rioters have been prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned, including at least 4 who were convicted of seditious conspiracy, and just this week sentenced to a possible 22 years. While you weren't present at this event, you commented on a since-deleted social media post that, quote, "I'm marching on DC this weekend Sunday. Biden will not be president." Biden will not be president, end quote. And later, quote, "I'm jealous. I truly wish I could go," end quote. Do you support the Capitol attacks that occurred on January 6th, 2021? And given the events that happened that day, do you still wish you could have been present?
So one of the things that you're missing from that quote is the date. And for some reason, my opponent thinks that I have the ability to look into the future, because the tweets that you read were in November, and if I can do the math correctly, November comes before January 6th. On January 6th, I was 6 months pregnant with 2 small children at home. I obviously do not support, nor did I think that it was going to get to that level of violence and destruction at the Capitol. I absolutely condemn those actions. No, I do not wish I was there, and if you look at the dates, I never said I wish I was there at January 6th. And there's a fine difference, but what is happening is that those words are being misconstrued, and my opponent loves January 6th because he's able to talk about it all day, every day, as a way to distract from his failed leadership.
Rebuttal, Mr. Poloncarz.
Certainly don't love January 6th. It was one of the worst days in our history of our country. I sat there watching it as someone who loves American history and politics and watching this complete attack on our Capitol, an insurrection. My opponent wants to talk about what she said before, but she didn't bring up the tweet that she said afterwards, which was, who were the bad guys there? Making the reference that the individuals who attacked the Capitol weren't the bad guys. There's a reason why she deleted her account. She didn't want anybody to see the extreme nature of her tweets. But if you go to chrissytweets.com, you could see it. And this is a teachable moment to each and every one of you. If you post something on the internet, even if you delete it, it's going to be out there and it can come back and haunt you.
Thank you, Mr. Poloncarz. Our next direct question will go to Mr. Poloncarz.
Mr. Poloncarz,
an allegation was brought to the County Board of Ethics on August 20th, asserting that you may have improperly provided a $60,000 grant to a cultural organization owned by an individual with whom you had a romantic relationship. Many of your constituents feel as if there was a lack of urgency in your communication with the county's Capital Projects Committee regarding the possible conflict of interest. Additionally, there has been no clarification on whether the romantic relationship in question existed at the time of the funds were allocated. In the interest of maintaining transparency and preventing potential conflicts of interest, should you be reelected, would you actively seek to influence changes in the safeguards and regulations in place to ensure the fair and ethical awarding of public contracts by elected officials and agencies?
I'm very proud of what we've done to actually amend the ethics law to make it the strongest ethics law among any county, and I worked with then Minority Leader Joseph Larigo to pass those laws. It was Minority Leader Joseph Larigo who made the resolution to actually approve the funding for those cultural capital organizations, and it then went to the legislature. I didn't even make the resolution for it, so the accusation that I did it was just incorrect. It was unanimously approved by the legislature. We have strong ethics laws. There are no doubts about that. And the idea is to prevent the elected official or a department head from benefiting financially. So let's just say a family member, like a parent, a brother, or a spouse, were to receive a contract, you want to know, because then theoretically the elected official could benefit financially. This project was used to create a wonderful exhibit on immigration, of all things, that has really been a hot topic issue. There was no financial benefit for me. As I said, the idea is to prevent anything that would financially benefit the elected official or commissioner. There's no benefit that I could have ever derived from it, and our laws are strong. In fact, the strongest ethics laws of any county in New York State, far stronger than actually the ethics code that normally exists in New York State.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Ms. Casilio?
Yes, I'm glad you clarified that it is a financial ethical issue, but you seem to leave out the sexual benefits that you give by giving out money to people that you're having relationships with. I attended the ethics board meeting, all of which were appointed by Mr. Poloncarz. The meetings are held directly next to his office, and they had said, per the laws that are set up, that because the person that was receiving the grants was not married to Mr. Poloncarz, therefore no ethics violations were committed, even though there were sexual relationships. And I think that's unfortunate, and that is going to be, when I get to Erie County government, is redefining those ethics laws for other matters in which people might benefit.
Thank you, Ms. Casilio. At this point in the debate, beginning with Ms. Casilio and then Mr. Poloncarz, we're going to air a commercial that each candidate has been running. We're going to allow each candidate, 2 minutes to respond to what they're going to watch in a moment, and there will be no rebuttal. If we could cue the first commercial, please.
Seen Chrissy Casilio. There's no hiding it. Chrissy Casilio.
Minutes to 2 minutes to respond to the commercial. Oh, the right question, Ms. Casilio. I apologize.
All right, Ms. Casilio. In an interview with WGRZ-TV, you were asked about several controversial and now deleted posts that you have made on social media regarding your personal beliefs about the near death of Buffalo Bill Damar Hamlin being a publicity stunt. You were asked if you take accountability for these statements. While you did say you did take full accountability, you also excused the claims, saying that at the time, you were a private citizen and that, quote, it's part of the fun of social media, engaging, poking, and stirring the pot, end quote. Such claims suggest a serious lack of judgment on your part. Do you stand by these posts, or do you think that the fun of social media excuses such statements?
Okay, Ms. Casilio will have 2 minutes, and there is no rebuttal to the commercial. Ms. Casilio.
Thank you. So One of the reasons why the Twitter account was deleted is for exactly what you're seeing now, so that you don't have a career politician that's scraping at the bottom of the barrel, taking things out of context to try to paint a picture of something that's not. And the bottom line is, most of those things, if not all of those things, were skewed in a way, if you again look at the dates, if you look at the headlines they're using, they're skewed in a way to try to paint a picture that doesn't exist. But the bottom line is this: I never supported January 6th. I never said that Damar Hamlin is dead. I obviously had commentary on certain topics, but for these career politicians to be able to take those and use that to smear me all over, I think it just shows you how worried he is about his own record and his ability to defend it.
Thank you. Our next commercial, please.
Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz has been accused of domestic violence, forcefully restraining and grabbing the woman.
Poloncarz, quote, became irate and grabbed her, restraining her body against the window.
The woman escaped and ran outside. The county executive allegedly followed her and grabbed her again.
Mr. Poloncarz has 2 minutes to respond to our next direct question. There will be no rebuttal.
The county's attention was drawn to your personal life rather than your policies throughout August and into September of this year. The domestic violence incident report by the Buffalo Police in which you are involved, along with the previous accusation of threatening behavior by a woman attempting to serve you with an affidavit in 2022, have led to some question your demeanor and suitability for public office. These incidents have prompted some to call you a hothead and even to call for your resignation. As these disputes have called into question not only your demeanor, but your judgment, how do you intend to reassure your constituents that you are not a hothead, but are in fact capable of facing the future challenges of the county with reason and thoughtfulness?
I am very proud of what we've been able to do in my administration, including leading our community through the most tumultuous times of our lifetimes. The issues associated with COVID, where I was there every day getting reports of the number of new deaths that were happening among our county residents. And then the terrible mass shooting last year in May, in which I was there 45 minutes afterwards and worked with our team to ensure that mental health services were provided to those who need it, as well as food to those who lost an opportunity to buy food because their supermarket was now closed for an indefinite period. We've worked very hard during my administration to let the public know about what we've done to ensure that we're creating a better, safer community for all. I am disappointed that a personal matter became public. I've discussed this. I'm talking about the issues that matter to the people of Erie County, and when I go out on the campaign trail, I'm hearing about those issues. Inflation, issues associated with whether we can actually move forward as a community during this national and international crisis. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to talk about those issues with the public because they understand what matters. My record as county executive is one of leading this community through the worst crisis our community has ever seen. And I'm looking forward to doing that if I'm given the opportunity to serve one more term on Election Day.
Thank you. We will go back to our format with 1.5 minutes direct and 45-second rebuttal. Our next direct question is to Ms. Casilio.
Mrs. Casilio, on May 14th, 2022, a man from Conklin, New York entered the Tops Friendly Markets on Jefferson Avenue and opened fire with an illegally modified Bushmaster AR-style rifle, killing 10 and injuring 3. After being taken into custody, the assailant pled guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder and was subsequently sentenced to life in prison without a chance for parole. While capital punishment has been outlawed in New York State, it is still possible that the perpetrator will be charged with federal crimes, which could possibly subject him to the death penalty. This second trial, however, would not be necessary if New York State still had the death penalty on its books. Would you support or oppose this man being sentenced to death should he be convicted of federal crimes? And would you support or oppose New York State readopting capital punishment for crimes such as a murder?
Absolutely. I don't need 1.5 minutes to answer that. What he did was horrible. He deserves to die. One of the saddest parts about that were the people that suffered. And I attended an event held by the 100 Club of Buffalo where they honored the heroes of that day. And there was a lot of heroes that came through, and it made me proud of the city of Buffalo and Western New York and our ability to come together. But far too much New York State and Erie County has policies that cater to the criminals, and law-abiding citizens get punished as a result of that. So yes, he needs to go.
Rebuttal, Mr. Poloncarz.
As I just said, actually I was on site about 40 minutes after the shooting. I did not go into the tops, but I was outside, saw things nobody should see. I'll leave it up to the family members of those who are deceased as to whether or not he should be subject to the death penalty under the federal rules. But he should never see the light of day again. I actually saw him when I was taking a tour with Sheriff Garcia of the holding center, and he was sitting in a cell, a pod all by himself. And that's what he deserves for the rest of his life. The one thing I have done, and I did this before the actual shooting, is I'm an advocate to eliminate all of these weapons of mass destruction, these AR-15s. They're used for only one thing only, to kill people. They kill indiscriminately and they kill quickly. No individual should have an AR-15.
Thank you. Our next direct question to Mr. Poloncarz.
Mr. Poloncarz, according to a study conducted by the University of Maryland, more than 80% of registered voters in the country support term limits for members of Congress and generally believe that public office turnover is a positive for their local government. You have been the Erie County Executive for 12 years and are currently running for an unprecedented fourth term. Like the old song says, if you've been doing it for years, we've already heard your song. If elected, what do you intend to do differently this term that would convince those who want to see a new face in office that you are the right candidate for Erie County Executive?
As I said earlier, we have elections for reasons. It's to choose who our leader is going to be for the greater community. And I ran in 2011 because I didn't like the direction of the community, and our community rejected the former county executive who was only elected to his first term 4 years before. We have term limits. They're called elections. I'm looking forward to serving one more term, and I've said only one more term. I would not run for a fifth term thereafter, to complete the work that we've done. I actually thought that this would be my last term, but I had no idea that we'd be dealing with 2+ years of COVID, the mass shooting, the November superstorm, the blizzard, and as such, all of the plans that we had were pushed to the side. I really thought this was going to be the year our new Buffalo Bills stadium would be open because we began negotiations in 2019, but we basically had to stop them for almost 2 years. So I'm looking forward to moving to continue work to ensure that the Bills stadium is built on time, to ensure that the Renaissance Commerce Park at the Bethlehem Steel site continues to completion. We work on our Live Well Erie campaign to ensure each and every one of you lives your best life possible. And that's why I'm running for one more term, to finish the job and complete the work that I thought I was going to be able to do this term but couldn't because of everything.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Ms. Casilio.
You've had 12 years to do your job, and another 4 years if you think that that is deserved, you are incorrect. You see, the problem with career politicians is that they lose touch with the people that they were elected to serve. And what happens is, when there is a major affordability issue, you have your career politician that will increase spending by 9% in their latest budget. Mr. Poloncarz, for the past 10 years, increased spending overall by $1 billion. What happens is that you make decisions such as not say anything about the gas stove bans, such as welcoming the migrant crisis here, because what matters most to you is moving forward your political career instead of serving the residents of Erie County. This, unfortunately, will be your last term.
Thank you. Our next direct question goes to Ms. Casilio.
Ms. Casilio, at the start of the year in our AP US Gov class, we were asked if we thought there would be another mass shooting this year. We all answered yes. Sadly, this question has become less of a whether or not question and more of a when question. According to the Washington Post, there have been nearly 400 school shootings since 1999. There have been many proposed solutions over the years, with Democrats often advocating for a stricter gun control legislation or even an outright firearm ban, and Republicans often suggesting the arming of teachers. Many schools lack the financial wherewithal, even for basic security measures, for keeping the students safe, such as metal detectors. It has been 25 years since Columbine, and little to nothing has actually been done. As a political newcomer, what solution do you have for this epidemic that past politicians have failed to deliver on.
So this might be an unpopular comment, but I actually think both sides have failed when it comes to keeping our kids and our communities safe. Because they have the solutions, they're just not implementing it. Taking away guns from law-abiding citizens and taking away their ability to protect themselves does not change a thing. All it does is make people feel less safe. And just like Mr. Poloncarz having armed security guards follow him at various events, we have a right to be armed and be able to protect ourselves from harm's way. Look at what is happening overseas. We need the ability to protect ourselves. In my plan, I have a family-first agenda, and we are going to make sure that it is a priority getting armed SRO officers in every single school in Erie County. Because, again, there's been no actual solutions that have happened, but in the meantime, we still have kids that are vulnerable. And we still have many schools that are not properly protecting their kids, and that needs to change. But in no way do I think that good law-abiding citizens losing their ability to protect themselves is going to change anything when it comes to these mass shootings. We have to get serious about the root of the problem. We have to get serious about mental health issues, and we have to get serious about being proactive in protecting our children.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Mr. Poloncarz.
There was a time in our country where we did not have school shootings. We did not have mass shootings. I grew up in that time. And there was a time in our country when these weapons of mass destruction, these AR-15s and the like, were banned, and we didn't have school shootings. And now we have them. Why? Because they were allowing the weapons that can be used to indiscriminately kill dozens of you at a single time out on the streets. And the argument is, well, we're creating a safer environment, and a good guy with a gun can take care of a bad guy with a gun. But there was a good guy last May. His name was Aaron Salter, a retired police officer who got shots off and hit that horrible human being who killed all those people. And yet he was killed and could not take down that man because of the body armor that he was wearing. We need to ban those guns.
Thank you. Our next direct question, Mr. Poloncarz.
Mr. Poloncarz, with the legalization of recreational marijuana use in New York State, not surprisingly, its consumption increased. But with this increase have also come the risks associated with increased use, especially as they apply to safety on our roads. Several studies have shown a significant rise in the number of motor vehicle accidents in which cannabis has played a role. With virtually no consistent and reliable tests available to check drivers for marijuana intoxication and a shortage of drug recognition experts in Erie County, what would you do to improve the county's capability to identify and punish impaired drivers should you be reelected?
Well, you're exactly correct. There really is no way to accurately test for someone who may be high on marijuana. That's the problem. And what we've done in my administration is we've continued our investment in the Stop DWI program, which is driving while intoxicated, but also driving while under the influence of a controlled substance like marijuana. Now, marijuana is not a controlled substance. However, we still arrest people for DWIs for drinking under the influence of alcohol. It is a difficult decision, and that's why we've invested more in a lot of these road stops that you see when you're driving along and the police are there and they check to see the individuals if they believe that they're intoxicated. We continue to do that. I look at it, and I think all of us can see it. There's not a few days that goes by when you don't drive down the road and you see someone who's weaving along, and my first initial thought is I'm going to get that license plate number and call 911 because that someone might kill someone. And having been and attended, unfortunately, funerals of individuals who died as a result of car accidents from the negligence of others, I don't want anybody to go through that. So we've continued to invest in the Stop DWI program, and we will increase investment.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Ms. Casilio.
You'll notice a pattern, particularly with New York State elected officials. They make a decision and then try to deal with the consequences after the fact. Before any laws regarding marijuana use and distribution was in place, all of those systems should have been planned for as far as how we would handle the driving situation and what other problems it would lead. Same with the migrant crisis. We say bring the migrants here without having a plan in place as far as how we're going to be able to afford it, how it will affect our community, how will it affect our schools. It seems to be a pattern, and because our officials are more prioritizing getting that legislation out there so they can brag about an election year without understanding and handling the consequences of what may happen.
Thank you. Our next direct question to Ms. Casilio.
Mrs. Casilio, in your campaign for county executive, you have proposed cutting taxes in Erie County by as much as 10%. This would be one of the largest tax cuts in the country, or the county, since 2001, when then County Executive Joel Giambra's 16% tax cut was implemented. This cut led to significant use of the county's general fund balance, crippling much of the county's reserves, and eventually resulting in an ironic but necessary increase in taxes. If elected, are you still willing to cut taxes by such a large amount? If so, where do you propose getting the required money to run the county, and would you consider taking from public services such as libraries, parks, and senior services?
Yes, this is actually a very simple answer. The difference between Joel Giambra's time in office compared to this time, besides the fact that I wasn't the county executive, was that we had a Supreme Court decision with Wayfair and how it affected how we were taxing online sales. And over the past 3 years, we've had about $300 million in surplus in our Erie County taxes. They are collecting more of your money, regardless of the property tax decrease. They are taking more of your money out of your pocket than they ever have in the history of Erie County. Spending has increased by $1 billion. The property tax levy has increased under his watch by $90 million. We do not need to be spending that much money. So we don't need to be cutting services. We don't need to be having these major slashes of programs. We simply need to spend more wisely, because if all of us are having to tighten our belt under inflation, then so can the government. We need to spend money more wisely. Remember, these are your tax dollars being spent. These are your dollars. You deserve to have it spent wisely.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Mr. Poloncarz.
I don't even know where she gets the $1 billion increase. My budget office can't figure it out because it's not true. Just because you say it doesn't make it true. It actually was much less than that. And she talks about a 9% cut in the property tax. Well, you'd have to pay for it elsewhere. And I don't understand, because she talked about there being a 9% increase in the budget, so we'll recut the property tax by 9% to make up for it. Well, you'd actually have to cut the property tax by 50% to make up for the increase, which 75% of the increase is due to state mandates. And nothing against my friends in state government, but we just got hit with a $25 million bill from New York State for Medicaid. We can't ignore that. We have to pay it, which means you'd have to cut libraries, parks, and other services that the public wants. There is no money tree where you can just go out there and pay for the services that you want.
Thank you. Our next direct question to Mr. Poloncarz.
Mr. Poloncarz, since its opening in 1955, the Skyway has polarized Western New Yorkers. While some hailed it as a real achievement in traffic, many also considered it an eyesore and an impediment along Buffalo's already overly industrial waterfront. More recently, however, calls to take it down have increased dramatically. This sentiment has been echoed in the words of Representative Brian Higgins, whose 26th congressional district includes the Skyway. He has said, quote, "The Skyway is dangerous, it is dated, and it is dirty," unquote. It is frequently closed in inclement weather because of its slippery conditions and extreme winds, and it is in a state of disrepair, as evidenced by dangerous falling debris signs placed all along the pylons of the Skyway. If elected, what will you do about the Skyway?
Well, I have publicly called for the Skyway to come down. I agree with Congressman Higgins, and I drove it many, many times when I lived in the South Towns. Unfortunately, it's not a decision of county government. It's the State Department of Transportation that owns the Skyway and can make the determination with that. The other thing you have to remember is if you take down the Skyway, you have to offer an alternative route for people from the South Towns to come into downtown Buffalo. And there has been talk about a South Towns connector that would go from Route 5 up Tiff Street and then go over to the 190. But that in itself might be $1 billion project. My preference is to take the Skyway down. I'm not a fan of the Skyway as someone who's driven it many times, including when it's very windy up here. It could be 30-mile-an-hour winds at the base, and it could be 60 to 70-mile-an-hour winds at the top. I'm not a fan of it. I wish it would come down, but it's not a decision that county government plays a role in, other than advocating for it to come down.
Your rebuttal, Ms. Casilio.
I agree. It's not an Erie County decision. However, as he said, you do have a seat at the table. What I hope and what I would do as county executive is similar to what was discussed in the last question, is I would make sure we vet all the consequences first before we just make this rash decision, because a ribbon cutting doesn't matter as much as people's safety and having a program in place before we spend billions of our taxpayer dollars to make sure that the plans are sound in place and have the best interest of Erie County residents.
Thank you. Our next direct question to Ms. Casilio.
Ms. Casilio, for the past 4 years, COVID-19 has widely been considered the #1 public health issue that Erie County has been facing. While this still continues to be a very serious disease within our community, another health crisis that is currently prevalent in Erie is the opioid epidemic. This year, Erie County is on track to have more deaths resulting from opioid overdoses than any other year since the cases began spiking in 2015. Some steps have been taken to address this issue, such as distributing free Narcan, a medicine that works rapidly to reverse an overdose. While this has helped significantly, there are still many people unfamiliar with the program who will continue to be at risk. If elected, how would you plan to make more people familiar with the resources the county has to offer? And what steps would you take to reduce the number of opioid-related deaths in Erie County?
Yeah, it's amazing how there's more people that have died, not only in Erie County, but in the entire country of opioid deaths. But we had the daily press conferences with Mr. Poloncarz from COVID. I can tell you the biggest issue in both cases is the lack of accountability for our people that were appointed to oversee those issues. I can tell you what certainly doesn't help the opioid crisis is the open border and bringing the migrant crisis here and allowing this free fall of fentanyl coming across our borders. So we have to get serious about closing the borders, we have to get serious about the migrant crisis, and we have to get serious about the mental health services and the root of the problems that come around opioids. People have less money in their pockets, people have a higher rate of depression, a lot of that because of COVID, and we have serious economic issues and we have serious mental health issues that play a major role in that opioid addiction, and it needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Mr. Poloncarz.
Once again, she gave inaccurate information. More people in our country did not die from an opiate overdose during the 3-year period of COVID. There's more people did not die. I know exactly how many people died. There are more than 3,000 individuals who died between March of 20 and March of 23 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in Erie County alone. And the estimate was we'd have over 6,000 die in the first 6 months if we had not taken action to shut down to protect our community. There are not more than 3,000 people who died in Erie County of an opiate epidemic, from the opiate epidemic in the same period. We've worked very hard to get Narcan out into the community, and the work that we've done has been replicated elsewhere. The problem is it's changed. It's no longer somebody getting addicted to prescription drugs that's causing it. It's individuals using cocaine, habitual cocaine users that are now spiked with fentanyl and dying, and we're working to address that.
Thank you. This will be our last direct question. Then I will ask a moderator question, and we'll have closing remarks from each of our candidates. Our next direct question goes to Mr. Poloncarz.
Mr. Poloncarz, during Tim Howard's tenure as sheriff from the years 2005 to 2022, 32 people committed suicide in the Erie County Holding Center. Even after his tenure ended, 2 more people committed suicide in 2022. The suicide rate among detainees is abnormally high. Many see these deaths as preventable. In 2009, there was a federal investigation into the holding center in an attempt to help reduce the suicide risk at the facility. But Sheriff Howard refused to let the federal investigators into the facility. There have been reports of guard misconduct, ranging from giving convicted criminals contraband to sexual misconduct to physical assaults against detainees. If reelected, what would you do to help reform this flawed holding center?
Well, I would like to note that there's been substantive changes that have been implemented by new Sheriff Garcia. The sheriff, unfortunately, is an independently elected official, and I cannot force them to do something. They have the ability to run their facility as they so fit, and that's what happened under Sheriff Howard. But Sheriff Garcia and I have worked very hard to address these issues such that that federal investigation you're talking about, which resulted in overseers coming in, is now over. They've actually ended it, saying that we have finally reached the level that is necessary to ensure that the federal government does not need to be there anymore to watch over the detainees. There's a reason why we're examining the process of potentially building a new facility to replace both the correctional facility and the holding center. The holding center is ridiculously old. It was built before my parents were born. You would never build a facility like that anymore. It is dangerous. We've given additional funds to the Sheriff's Office to hire more guards to ensure that there are less problems in the holding center, but we do need to go forward and replace it. And that's why we're doing an analysis right now. But I'm proud of what I've been able to do with Sheriff Garcia, who's a complete difference from Sheriff Howard, who just ignored the issues. Sheriff Garcia is getting in there and addressing them, and we're working with his office to do that.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Ms. Casilio?
Yeah, my opponent comes from the defund the police crowd. He has openly endorsed people that have said that, and that is a major part of the people that he affiliates himself with. Besides funding and besides the jail, there is a major morale problem when it comes to our sheriffs. There is a recruitment problem. The sheriffs are overworked and underpaid and understaffed. And what doesn't help that cause is when you don't have elected officials that are supporting them and letting them know that they have your back. So that is going to change when I am in office. Besides the appropriate funding, I'm going to let everybody know that I am pro-police and pro-supporting the sheriffs and getting that properly staffed.
Thank you.